right, Mr. Boyce, you can call your next witness.
Thanks. I call Mr. David Kidder as a witness.
All right. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. Thank you. Please state and spell your name for the record.
David Kidder, Eavidkidder.
All right. I'm sorry I forgot to do this for the last witness, but Mr. Kidder, where are you today?
I'm at Rehabilitation Institute of Washington.
All right. Do you have anything in any documents in front of you?
I do not.
Perfect. All right. Mr. Boyce, your witness.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a few questions. The first is, Mr. Kidder, you work for the Rehabilitation Institute of Washington located in Seattle. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Next question is, what is your position there?
I'm a programs coordinator for multidisciplinary rehab programs. I support and function in capacity of supporting a multitude of providers, 21 to be exact, of different specifications, specialties, I mean to say.
Okay. Next question. What kind of programs and services does the Rehabilitation Institute offer to injured workers or individuals in general?
We specifically provide 2 CARF-accredited programs for workers' comp system, labor and industries, and self-insured entities. They are a brain injury rehab program and a structured intensive multidisciplinary treatment programs. We also provide work conditioning, work hardening, individual physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, psychology services, and individuals' physiatry exams.
Great. Next question. Can you describe what kind of business relationships did the Rehabilitation Institute of Washington used to have with interpreters before the implementation of the online interpreting work scheduling system?
We primarily worked with networked speech language providers, interpreters, and we scheduled with them directly. We primarily work with independent providers in the past, and we also have worked with agencies in the past for what they refer to as languages of lesser diffusion. We've also worked with using the department resources that no longer exist, their website, and obtaining interpreters directly for our services.
Okay. Next question. Can you describe how your business relationship with interpreters has changed since the implementation of the scheduling system since April 12th?
Excuse me?
I'm sorry. Yes,
I object as to the relevance of this line of questioning.
Mr. Boyce?
Well, I rebut that because this question is going to speak about how interpreters have been affected from scheduling with them. So this is actually very relevant to show how working conditions have been affected to interpreters.
Sure, and for that purpose, I think it could be potentially relevant, so I'll overrule the objection. Mr. Boyce, you can continue.
Thank you. So the question was, can you describe how your business relationship with interpreters has changed since the implementation of the scheduling system since April 12th, and then what has changed when booking interpreters for your appointments at the facility?
Well, it's a much more time-consuming, laborious process from our end. I mean, there have been some occasions where I put as much as 3 to 4 hours into the span of a week to address problems with the system. It has created some barriers to us actually scheduling interpreters. We have some latitude to assign who we deem appropriate. The system lets us do that, but even then, there are some challenges with the system that have been put in place to actually scheduling those interpreters.
Okay, thank you. So, would it be fair to say that you're not able to schedule interpreters for occupational therapy appointments based on your criteria since the implementation of the scheduling system?
Objection, leading.
Sustained. Can you rephrase the question, Mr. Boyce?
Okay. Are you able to schedule interpreters for occupational therapy appointments based on your criteria?
No.
Next question. What else would you like to add?
I object to the form of the question. It doesn't make it possible for us to anticipate what the question really is. I don't think it's a proper question to ask the witness if he has anything in general to add.
Yeah, Mr. Boyce, can you narrow that a little bit? I mean, I'm okay with somewhat open-ended questions, but please narrow that to some extent so that we're getting into things that are relevant for this particular proceeding.
Sounds good. What else would you like to add concerning your relationship with interpreters and how they have been affected on their working conditions?
Well, I could comment on the challenges with how the system has affected the people we work with. I basically had a dynamic where in this facility we could assign interpreters in an expedient manner, and interpreters that we were able to identify as qualified in providing appropriate services for our patient clientele, where the system has changed some of that dynamic. My concern certainly is always having the highest capable interpreters, and to what I've already identified with the contract manager for L&I is that Interpreting Works is not capable of identifying those interpreters. So that's always been my issue with random assignments.
Thank you very much. No more questions.
Mr. Younglove?
Thank you. Mr. Kidder, Mr. Willis asked you a question about how things have changed since April 12. Do you understand what year he was referring to? April 12 of what year?
This year,
How long had you been aware that L&I was planning on implementing a new scheduling system?
since February of 19,
And how were you aware?
it was brought to my attention that legislation was about to pass, and I testified on the subject the same month of February 2019 in front of the State House.
Okay, so you participated in the legislation by testifying in, I think you said February of 19, is that right? Or,
Yeah, I didn't participate in the legislation, it was already passed.
you participated by testifying, and I'm sorry, the date was?
I can't give you a specific date. There was a hearing of testimony in front of the State House in February of 2019. They listened to input from parties of both pro and con for the legislation. I basically participated on some level of amicus curiae. I basically provided information from a provider's perspective. I talked about primarily the subject of Title VI of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, where it is the provider that determines communication occurring.
Did you follow L&I's work on the new scheduling system during, say, 2019, after February?
I had some interaction in the year 2020 because it took a while for them to implement the system, and I initiated dialogue with the department directly, but I did not get much of a response. That was in September of 2020, and in light of some of the changes that happened this year, I followed up with them again. Finally got contact with Karen Ahrens, who was the contract manager up until July 1st of this year. She apologized for the lack of response to my concerns in September of 20. The previous contract manager had retired.
I don't believe I have any other questions. Thank you, Mr. Kidder.
Thank you.
Ms. Wolf?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Did you subscribe to the listserv that Labor and Industries had for providers with regard to the interpreter services?
I do believe so.
So you received updates via that listserv communication?
Well, we get notifications through the LNI system.
Okay. And I take it through the old system before the changes were made, that you basically had relationships with specific interpreters that you used on a regular basis for your clients. Is that a fair characterization?
Yes, and otherwise, I mean, we use a lot of resources for interpreters. So we had interpreters that we had, identified as appropriate in providing services, but there's always certain occasions where we had to do outreach to finding appropriate interpreters for the services we provide.
Okay, but it's fair to say for the most part you use the same interpreters.
Try. They use consistent interpreters.
I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Mr. Boyce?
Mr. Kidder, you said that you testified at a public hearing about the bill that was passed requiring LNI to make a decision on their implementation. You also said that the year was 2019, the month of February. My records say that the public hearing for this bill was February 2018 instead. Is that correct? Can you recall that?
Actually, that probably sounds correct. Yeah.
Thanks. No more questions.
Anything further? Mr. Younglove?
No, thank you.
Ms. Wolf?
Oh, thank you.